Good evening, and welcome to the first meeting of the year for the Energy and Environmental Advisory Committee. Today's Wednesday, February 23rd, 2022. We do have some committee members here, one that is new, and that's Chris Tenay, our Director of Communication. I'm also new as well as Town Supervisor, and we also have committee members Matt Piston, Sarah Waterman, Sinette Cavalier, Marissa Zwick, and Bob Knauer. So we'll start our meeting with a public participation session. This is a time for members of the public to participate in talking about EEAC issues. There are three ways to reach us. One is by coming in person. The second is by calling us at 340-8771, or you can contact us through our website, www.penfield.org. And I'm just checking to see if we have anyone on hold. No calls, no one there. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the committee? Okay, seeing none, we'll move right into our agenda for this evening, and that is, first of all, a review of our CCA program. Sarah Waterman is going to take us through where we are with community choice aggregation and how it stands right now. Thanks.
Great. So we have launched the Community Choice Aggregation Program for the town of Penfield. The expected launch was supposed to be the beginning of December, and there were some delays due to some DPS staffing changeovers. So those have been resolved at this point to get the program launched. We still have, and we will have for the duration of the program, a fixed rate of 5.733 cents per kilowatt hour for that base rate, which is 50% green. And we have a fixed rate of 6.443 cents per kilowatt hour for the Penfield 100. The Penfield 100 residents can opt up to. If residents did not take an action prior to December 8th, that's when they would have been enrolled in the program. And if residents still want to take an action to not be a part of the program, they can contact Constellation New Energy directly, contact Good Energy as the town's administrator, or go to penfieldcca.com and opt out through those means. Some residents are still just starting to get their bills because the program technically launched in January. So if you had, say, a January 28th billing date, you may not have received your first bill as part of the CCA program, as of today being the 23rd. With that, I do have some other information pertaining to the program and RG&E's average rates that I can share with the committee.
Before we go on just a second, I just want to clarify that Penfield 100, for anyone watching, that means that it's 100% renewable.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So looking back at the January RG&E average rate, which it's an average rate because basically every day electricity rates fluctuate just like the stock market does. So the average rate for January was 6.56 cents per kilowatt hour, which was about 1.5 cents increase from December, which is, it's a pretty large number. And we had a lot of cold days at the beginning of January, so there were a large number of residents that had higher electricity bills. Some were concerned that was due to the CCA program, and we've clarified those concerns for the residents that did reach out to the town. For the 3-month prior average, so that would be January, December, and November, that's an average of 5.63 cents per kilowatt hour. That's just slightly below what that 50% is. Currently, there's an expectation that electricity prices will continue to go up. Obviously, that can change, but that's the current expectation, which is, again, why the town board in 2021 decided to move forward with this program. With that, I did want to share some of the metrics that we've received for the program. Originally, there were 13,341 accounts that were eligible to be in the CCA program. We've discussed eligibility before, but I'll clarify that for anyone that's new watching. Eligibility is who can participate, and the items that make you not eligible is if you have a block on your RG&E account. That would be something you would have to contact RG&E to do. Basically, you taking steps to prevent any third party from changing who your supplier is. You would be potentially on a low income based plan with RG&E, which is generally like an LMI type thing, or basically an agreement you have set up with RG&E. It is not the same thing as budget billing. Budget billing is you get billed every month, basically an average of what your 12-month sum is. Or you would already be with an ESCO. An ESCO is a different energy provider that you would have chosen. The residents that were not eligible for the program would fit into one of those three categories or multiple of them. And that is why it's that approximately 13,000 rate that were eligible. Of those eligible accounts, 4,238 opted out. That is above what most CCA programs have experienced in New York State. That's approximately 31.8% opt-out rate. So it's a little high. Something different in this part of New York State than the rest of New York State is that in the opt-out process, residents got a letter from the town and Constellation notifying them of their eligibility for the program and their option to opt out. With that, RG&E also did a robocall to all of the residents that are eligible or were eligible. That robocall was not very detailed, and it gave a callback number for the Good Energy local number, so that if residents had questions about the program, they could contact Good Energy and not RG&E or specifically Constellation. That's not something most energy providers do, at least in New York State. And even in the Good Energy's experience, it's not very common. So a lot of residents were very concerned at first of what was going on. I haven't heard about this. This robocall did not make sense. Can I have more information? So they reached out to the town, they reached out to Good Energy, and a fair number also went to the Penfield CCA website, which is what it's there for. We probably had, at the town, I would guess, maybe 100 or 200 calls altogether, basically asking about that, trying to learn things. There was some resident feedback of concern of why is government making this decision for us? There were a lot of people that were just really curious about the program because they didn't know much about it and they wanted to understand. Basically the same concerns that we heard in our research process for the CCA programs. Good Energy had over 800 opt-outs through the website. So the website was used for about a quarter of that process. We did have 23 opt-ups. So that's exciting. Those are residents that wanted the 100% green option. And yeah, they're people that were a little more excited to be more sustainable, even at that time of having a slightly higher cost. Currently, the Penfield 100, based on the January average, is lower than what RG&E's rate average was. So that's kind of the sum for the CCA program right now. I can, if you want, go through what the green impact statement is. We have a projected one on file, but because of DPS's delays, it'll probably be a couple months before we have a formal one from DPS. And again, that's the Department of Public Service. I know that's a lot of information.
Well, I just want to recap it just a little bit before I open it up to questions. So basically, given the fact that the electricity prices will still be, they're expected to increase because of world factors, certainly beyond our control. Town of Penfield residents who have opted into this program, or that who are in this program and did not opt out, will have a stable rate of 5.733 cents per kilowatt hour.
That is correct. And if somebody has opted into the program or not taken steps to opt out, then they can still choose to opt out at no fee.
Right.
But that's their choice to stay in or leave the program.
But right now, we're trailing.
Right now,
Right.
if you're in the program, you're likely saving money.
Okay. All right. Are there any questions for Sarah?
Is there going to be another, like, public education session or some way to try and capture those that opted out, since there was such a high number of them?
So at this point, we have not scheduled one. That is definitely something that we can talk about and see about doing. And I'm going to write it down so I've got it. What we are actually working on right now is, it's called doing sweeps. So between November and now, when the first, when Constellation went to RG&E for the first group of residents that were eligible, people have moved in, moved out. There's basically been changeover. It's a very small percentage of like our eligible accounts and residents, but there are people that weren't here for the beginning of the program and the prior to the program, so they don't know about the program, or they don't know that they can be part of it. So we are working on another opt-out letter for those residents. Constellation New Energy has agreed to include them. It was not in our original contract for them to, but it's a choice that the town could have them included. Realistically, it's not a harmful choice because it's just giving residents more options and kind of making them aware of what's going on. So we're expecting to send that letter out by the end of this month, if possible. And by we, I mean us with Good Energy and Constellation New Energy.
About how many letters would go out?
I don't have an exact number.
Okay.
It's closer to 100 or 200 than the thousands. So it's small. But that likely will end up giving us some more phone calls from residents that get letters and because they'll also get robocalls, they'll also get letters from RG&E once they've gotten past that opt-out time period. So we'll likely get contacts again from residents just checking in and seeing what's going on. Some residents saw the letters that came out before and didn't know if it was real or not, just because there's so many scams that go on.
Sure.
They just contacted the town to make sure.
I'm just wondering if that might be something we'd want to do under communication and announcements at a town board meeting, just to alert the community as much as possible.
Sure.
So we can look at that, obviously not tonight, but next week when we have our first ledge meeting.
Okay.
Okay, good.
And then I had a question, just to verify, so people that have opted out still have the ability to now opt in?
They do, at no cost for that action. If they're part of an ESCO and they're leaving an ESCO, they need to check their contracts, make sure there's no termination fees or anything with that. For this program, it is not the same as being part of an ESCO. You as a resident could choose to have Constellation New Energy as your ESCO. But in this regard, they're working for the CCA program.
Are any other questions?
Yeah, so I think that's good news for the people that maybe were reluctant and didn't know what to expect. Maybe the reaction was first just to opt out. But now the fact that there's a 15% savings for the January average versus what people would actually pay, the fact that they can now opt in, I think, people may want to consider or look at.
Marissa?
I was going to ask, this might not be as relevant right now, but in future endeavors, does the town have some sort of social media platform to reach out to people, because I know something I saw and my mom saw was in a Facebook group of citizens from Penfield. There were a lot of angry people complaining, and my mother ended up actually being the one to direct them to the CCA website. So I don't know if in the future there would be something the town could do that would direct those people.
Well, interesting enough, we have our Director of Communication right here, so I'll let him answer that.
Yeah, so I'm not sure specifically what or when that occurred. But from our perspective, in terms of a town responding, we do like to be careful in terms of how we craft a response. But certainly if there is some information out there or questions, we can direct people to the right resources. How we will do that will certainly depend on the situation. We may go about things differently depending on what platform it might be on or whatnot, but we can certainly point people to the right resources. And like you said, and what you did was correct, is to let them know that we do have all that information on our website. And if they're not comfortable on the website, they can certainly give us a call as well. But if you have any additional thoughts or input on that, I'd be glad to hear it from you, and we can look at best ways to respond to that moving forward.
And just for some history reference from before Chris was here, when we did get some concerns over the CCA program on Facebook groups, like private groups that you have to join to participate in, we ended up doing a few of the town's social media posts, filling in the formal information both for the town website and the Penfield CCA website, and then also some community members that are part of Color Penfield Green chose to go online and kind of volunteered to go online and spread some of the same information, the correct information, correct resources. Just because I can't spend all day chasing Facebook doesn't mean that there aren't people that are happy to provide resources.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
And Sarah, I do want to thank you for fielding those up to 200 phone calls, because if they came to the town, they generally went to your office. And so we very much appreciate your taking the time and effort to deal with every question.
Thank you. And I will say Lisa Grosser in the supervisor's office was a big help with that too.
Noted. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Sarah before we move on? Okay. I'd like to move on to talk about item number 4, which is our urban forestry grant. And I know Catherine is not here. And Sarah, is this something you can speak to? Or
I can speak briefly to it.
Okay.
I think I didn't end up with the correct, oh no, I have it. So talking with Catherine is in the planning department, and she's been working on the urban forestry grant to basically, what it's for is to basically purchase trees and then plant them somewhere in town. Catherine had a great idea to both purchase trees to plant in town as well as do a tree giveaway. The town hasn't done a tree giveaway in a number of years. It's something that we used to do, but was less common since COVID has been a thing. The grant does not specifically mention the size of trees, but part of the requirement after Catherine reached out to some of the people that make decisions on that was that smaller trees that basically are like 12 inches to 24 inches would not likely be funded if that was the only part of the project. So the town is also looking at 5 to 6 foot trees and determining where would be best to plant those. I believe the application was due last week. It's my understanding that that was completed and submitted. There was also a request to have essentially sponsorship, and by that, or recommendations is the correct word for that. And I believe late December, early February, there was a request to the EEAC community or committee if we would like to sponsor that. And I believe that sponsorship was completed.
So I'll
not
jump,
sponsorship, sorry. Recommendation.
I'll jump onto that. The deadline, so this is a grant worth $1,000 if we were to receive it, for trees, basically, and to do a tree giveaway. The deadline for the grant was February 10th. It did go out on time. And we did submit letters of recommendation from this board, and I sent it to the members of the board just to make sure that they were okay with signing a letter of support for the grant, and that went off. I am not sure when the decision on the grant will be made, but I'll certainly keep you posted. Okay. All right. Before we jump to goals and priorities, I want to just make sure that we talk about the electric car show because that's coming up
Sure.
on April 9th. And we'll just circle back after that.
Okay.
Okay?
So this year, we chose the date of April 9th to have the electric car show at the community center. There is a national site. It's called Drive Electric Earth Week. And I will provide Chris to you the link to that. People can sign up if they want. It's primarily electric car owners come out with their cars. Sometimes we have dealerships that bring cars out. And it's really an outreach for other people in the community to talk to owners, see the cars. We have usually a couple tables there. Color Penfield Green would be there with a table talking about their information. When we were talking about the CCA, we may put some things out there if people still have questions about the CCA. And I believe, I'd have to go back and check, but I think we have a 3-hour window. It's like 9 to noon. We keep it, pretty limited. And I think this will be the 9th year we've done the spring show. I'll get the information to Chris. In the past, we've done a press release, so people in the community know. A lot of times when we've done it, it's usually been about a week before or people forget about it. And typically we have maybe 20, 25 cars at the spring show. So, we'll keep our fingers crossed for weather. One of the organizational participants is David Keefe from Greater Rochester Clean Cities. And he, through the years, because he has a budget that he also promotes, it's through NYSERDA, he usually, is there too and does a lot of the organizational work. So more to come on that. If you go to the website, I haven't finished the description, but there'll be more of a description for people to sign up.
Thank you.
Something, Bob, that we talked about in the community campaign meeting today included the car show. So Igor, one of the Color Penfield Green members, said that he would try to put together a flyer similar to the RIT car show flyer,
Yeah.
so that we can also use that with our communications.
Okay.
And Chris is working with me on that just to make sure I pass him that stuff.
Good.
All right, thank you. So I did want to make sure we covered that in time.
Sure.
Circling back to goals and priorities for 2022, I was hoping that we could have an open discussion about what it is we would like to accomplish this year as a committee. I know that CCA, you spent an enormous amount of time dealing with that over the past 2 years, and that is well underway. I'm not sure we have to spend quite the same amount of time on it this year. So we have an opportunity now to maybe do some planning on some other things we'd like to accomplish. So I was hoping that we could have an open discussion about that, and set some work for us, some goals. So I'm very open to hearing what people are thinking.
If you want,
know-
I could touch on some of the things that we've started.
Great.
If that would help.
Yes.
So we've discussed previously CEC, that's Clean Energy Communities. And we've discussed previously looking into CSC, which is Climate Smart Communities. In the last year, the town did choose to move forward with one of the parts of the CEC program called Community Campaigns. That is basically something that the town can potentially get $2,000 to $5,000 grants for some kind of sustainability measure, whether that's car charging or something similar, or car charging stations or something similar. So the town is in progress with the help of Color Penfield Green, working on 2 community campaigns. One is electric vehicles, and one is clean heating and cooling and energy efficiency. The way to do those campaigns is by hosting some classes to educate residents on them, and to have community partners, whether that be a group like Heat Smart Monroe, which is a nonprofit helping with clean energy for homes, or different dealerships around town that have supply of electric vehicles. Specifically from this group, Bob Knauer and I have been working with Color Penfield Green on that, including Bob doing presentations. So that's going well. And it's in progress, and by that I mean we have a portion of the required participants to actually submit the final application. We did get our preliminary application approved. So that's just one of the potential high-impact actions of clean energy communities. So I'll kind of throw that back to everybody else of what we may be interested in looking into or moving forward with.
Yeah, so I'll kind of second that. We've done a lot of the background work for both of those programs, both the clean energy and the climate smart. And they very much go hand in hand. And I think we liked a lot of the features of the clean energy community because it did provide a lot of grant money, in little bits. So I think it was worth trying to continue with that. I know one of the components was that we needed to get a town board resolution in place. And we did a lot of draft work on that, but I don't think it ever made it to an actual resolution.
That was for climate
That's the
smart
climate
communities.
smart community one, which that was
Okay.
one of the components, is if you started that process, that also fed into the clean energy.
And that, correct me if I'm wrong, that document or that resolution basically proclaims that the town would like to be more sustainable, and I don't remember how specific it got for the
Yeah,
requirements.
there was a series of resolutions embedded in that, none of which I don't believe took specific requirements, but they were more like commitments. And the idea that we would consider, we would strive for, we would value, there wasn't really anything that was concrete in the sand type of thing. But we can definitely dig that out and kind of take a look at it from your perspective now and just see if that's still in alignment with what the current town board would feel was a reasonable presentation.
So I definitely would want to figure out where that ended, where that trail ended, and then pick it up with the new town board. So I appreciate that. I was not aware of that. So I'll look into that.
So Nat, if you have any of those draft documents, would you mind
Yeah,
providing them?
we'll dig them out and forward them back through,
Great.
Thank you very much.
for sure.
Appreciate that. Ideas from everyone else?
I think we talked a little bit about the need for, or the next phase of charging stations in the town. It was interesting driving here this afternoon. It was evident that there could have been 2 more ports, with my car and Sonnet showing up, and there may have been others. And And there are dollars available for some help with starting that. There's been some discussion at the municipal lot at the Four Corners. In that particular case, RG&E has to put some infrastructure in to do that because it wouldn't be tied into a town building. So I think that's, something maybe this year we can work more on what, the next phase would be for charging stations. Getting back on the CEC program, as I remember, maybe Sarah, you can help me with this. There was some training that was done with the building department
Yep, so
in the fall.
Yep, so there was energy, I want to say it was energy code training, but I don't remember the exact
Yeah.
title. We did get credit for that in the CEC program. So like if you go to the clean energy program, sorry, I'm mixing up my acronyms. If you go to the website for that, then, and you look up Penfield, you'll see that we've received 200 points for that.
And I think it's hard to make it an absolute requirement, but when developers come into the town, I think it's good to maybe talk a little bit more about some energy-saving practices for new construction.
Are these the stretch requirements?
I'm sorry?
Is it stretch acronym?
Yeah, that
Okay.
sounds, yeah.
Stretch New York.
Right.
And even on planning board for some of the mixed-use developments, we've tried to promote charging stations in some of the projects where the residents would have garages, pre-wire the garages so a charging station can be installed in the garage, things like that. And across the country, there's certain municipalities that do put that into code. I don't know if, we would necessarily have to go that far, but I think it could be done in a way that it would be a strong recommendation for the different developments in the town. I know for the mixed-use projects for charging stations themselves, they've been, very open to putting them in. They're showing them on their site plans. So, it's kind of the next step because people that are renting or in certain housing situations, they don't have a means to charge unless the site has provided something, for charging.
Okay. Marissa, did you want to add anything?
I had more of a general question about the clean energy community. I'm not sure, have we gone through and looked at all of the possibilities to get points and prioritized what we want to do?
So I'm not aware that we've prioritized what we want to do. However, we have started taking action on items that basically the town and EEAC have started prior to looking into the program, similar to, or for example, the streetlight change that we've been working on. And Jim Kreckman has come into the committee multiple times to share where that is in process, including the audit of all of the town streetlights that was done last year. That is something that is a high-impact action that Penfield had already started before looking into this program.
But I think your point is well taken,
Yes.
and especially as a new person coming into this committee, I'm not necessarily sure where that process is at, looking at all the requirements. What did we want to do? What could we do? That kind of thing. If you would like, we can revisit that at the next meeting I'm also very happy to take what we've talked about and, put it down in writing, and then we can discuss and hopefully memorialize it at a March meeting as well, so that we have a plan of work for the year ahead. I'm very big into setting goals and trying to do that, if that's okay.
I think that'd be very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the approach so far was a little bit more of low-hanging fruit, things that we'd already started.
Right.
But it would be good for this group to kind of get level set once again on what some of the basic requirements are and how it was put together, so.
And if we've already gotten the low-hanging fruit, what's the next level? And start looking at that. So we also want to keep the new town board kind of in that process and bring them along with that. So if that's okay, I think we can sort of set the agenda for March, and I'll have that ready for you.
And I can work with you to send out a copy of what those high-impact actions are, so that the committee can look at them prior to the meeting.
Perfect. That would be helpful. That'd be great. I will say that I'll share out also that I received a comment from a resident that she wanted the town to look at a townwide composting program. I'm not sure if this committee would necessarily want to discuss that, or if that's better suited for something else, but I did want to at least share that with this group, and I'll share it with Conservation Board as well, so they're aware.
As in like a drop-off location?
Yeah, a residential drop-off location, yes.
I believe that would be similar to, right now, residents can drop off brush. They cannot drop off leaves or grass, but they can drop off brush, and then that's turned into mulch, and the residents can pick up mulch.
This resident uses, it's actually the same one I use, it's called Impact Earth, which is a food compost service. I'm not sure there's a town doing food composter and like that. That's a whole different experience. But I do want to share that feedback.
And to consider with that, if we do look into that more, if there is a location in town where that could go. For example, right now, the mulching is done at the DPW facility. There's a large pile of brush there. And then residents would pick up mulch at this town facility in one of the parking lots in the park.
Thank you. Okay, anything else we want to throw out on the table and work with? Okay, I think until we see that CSC document, or CEC document, we're going to. Too many acronyms.
It really is.
Too many letters.
And they all start with C.
They do.
They all have an E, right?
You threw CCA on top of it. It was like.
I think that'll help organize us a little bit better once we see that. That's a really good point to bring up, Marissa.
So I guess from the perspective of continuing things, I'm hoping some of the things like the annual cleanup days or drop-offs and those sort of things are still also in the radar. You know, for a long while, there was like an actual townwide cleanup day.
So I believe that transition, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that transition to Good Neighbor Day and became a little more of like picking up leaves or helping your neighbors in that regard, rather than like a trash pickup that Marissa actually helped coordinate for a good number of years and did quite a bit on. And then on the other side of things, the town has been doing drop-offs yearly of hazardous material, no, not hazardous material, of electronics and those types of materials.
The shredding day.
Yep, and a shredding day. So my understanding is that there is currently a plan to have a similar day like that this fall.
There is.
And then we will continue to work with Webster, where we've been trading off every year for those drop-off days.
Don't quote me, might be October 1st.
Good.
And I was going to say, as for the town cleanup, obviously, as I get older, I get busier. I'm hoping to be able to return to that this year.
Oh, great.
Great, let us know how we can support.
And that's completely reasonable as you're approaching the end of high school.
All right, so moving forward then, I have on the calendar meetings on March 23rd, June 22nd, September 28th, and December 21st. So about 4 more meetings this year. Is that a good meeting schedule? Is that too infrequent? What would you like to see?
So you have March and then June?
I have March, June, September, December.
So the March
Essentially
one
once a
is,
quarter coming up.
Correct.
the March one is closer to now because we were going to have one in January and
Right.
that was delayed until now.
Right. Are you, my question is, are you comfortable meeting quarterly, or is that, I mean, you seems like you're still getting work done, right? Okay.
I think that's
I think
reasonable.
it's, well, I was going to say it's reasonable, but at the same time, I feel like it gives us way too much opportunity to lag in between. Whereas it was, with the effort that was required with the CCA, it was more reasonable that we weren't necessarily spending this time together because there was a constant path of work being done not here. Whereas for right now, because we don't really have things that we can do offline, I mean, I think I look forward to a March meeting so we can kind of get marching orders for what we should be doing as well going forward.
So you're thinking March and then maybe May, every other month?
Every other month, I think, would also, that's just me, you know, you guys can.
No, I would agree with that.
I actually
would
agree
agree
with
with
that,
that.
yeah. Yeah. I think that if we're looking at that plan, it's going to require us to come together more often. So maybe what we'll do is we'll reschedule, we'll keep the March meeting, but then reschedule from there to every other month, if that's okay. Okay, great. Terrific. That was all I had on the agenda for today. It was very much a get settled, get on the same page as the first meeting of the year. Does anyone have any new business to add? Okay, well, seeing none, then I think we can call this meeting adjourned at 4:44. And we'll see you in March 23rd.